A long time ago, there was a couple who lived in a faraway land. Mr. Akejus and his wife were a very successful couple. Mr. Akejus had so many farmlands and lots of people who worked for him, while Mrs. Akejus would go to other villages to buy palm oil, which she sold in very large quantities at their local markets. They had been married for over 40 years, and people still marvel at how they managed to find so much happiness in each other's company. They would laugh at each other's jokes and hold hands during their evening strolls. Some younger couples would sometimes wish they could be like them. "What am I even wishing for?" one of them snapped out. "Maybe just the peace they enjoy and their wealth. And I would wish that my husband and I will live as long as they have lived, even longer. Besides this, they can keep the rest to themselves." Well, there was really a part of the story that no one wanted to identify with. They had been married for so long, and though they had everything, they had no children. Mrs. Akejus especially was not a very happy woman. She would cry and cry whenever her husband was away and the thought came to her. There was one of her maids, Adu, who always noticed her. She would go to Mrs. Akejus and console her. "Do not cry so much, ma'am. Mr. Akejus will be so sad to see you like this," she would say. Mrs. Akejus had a special liking for this maid because she was always very observant and caring. One night, she stayed up so late and would not sleep. She was so disturbed that she began to cry again. Mr. Akejus was sad. "What now?" he asked. "I thought we have agreed that there will be no more tears in this house. Why are you crying again?" "Look at us," she said. "We have everything anyone could ask for. But who will take care of these things when we are no longer here? We are old and grey now, and if these things don't bother you, what else does?" You're right this time, you know. We have very little time, and who will take care of all of these things really when we are no longer here? "I have an idea," Mrs. Akejus interrupted. "Let us make one of our maids our child." Mr. Akejus thought, that is not a bad idea. But who among them would we make our child? "I know," Mrs. Akejus said. "Adu will make a very good child." Adu. You have not suggested badly. But we need to put her to the test to know if she is worthy to be our child. The next morning, Mrs. Akejus brought out a treasure box and called Adu to follow her to one of the farmlands with the treasure box. When they got to the farm, she opened the treasure box, which contained lots of gold. "Hurry," she said. "Let's dig up a portion of this land. I want to hide this treasure box in this farm. Please tell no one about it. The treasure in it is so much that I can no longer leave it in the house." They dug a portion and hid the treasure box and left. The next day, Mrs. Akejus sneaked out of the house to check the treasure box. But alas, it wasn't there anymore. When she got back, Adu was nowhere to be found. The couple were very sad. Mrs. Akejus was even more sad because she loved Adu so much. "No problem," Mr. Akejus consoled his wife. "That is just a little out of all we have. We will try another maid until we can get a trustworthy maid who would become our child." They tried another maid, and another, and yet another. It was all the same. Until the 5th maid. Her name was Maid, and she was an orphan. Mrs. Akejus had taken her to the farmland as usual with the treasure box. She opened the treasure box and the maid, Maid, saw lots of gold in the treasure box. "Hurry, let us dig up a portion of this land. I want to hide this treasure box in the farm. Please tell no one about it. The treasure in it is so much that I can no longer leave it in the house." So they hid the treasure box and left. The next day, when Mrs. Akejus sneaked to the farm, she noticed that the treasure box was still there. In fact, someone had come back to the farm to cover up the dark portion so well that no one would know that anything was buried there. She went back, and the next day, she took Maid with another treasure box to the farm. They hid it, went away, and the very next day, the treasure boxes were all still there. She took Maid a third day with a bigger treasure box to the farm, and they hid it there. Yet again, when Mrs. Akejus got there the next day, all 3 boxes were still very much there, even more secure. She was so happy. She told her husband everything that had happened. They called Maid and informed her that she would no longer be their maid but their child. They threw a very big party to celebrate her and also revealed that all the jewelry that were put in the previous boxes were all fake. When the other maids who ran with their boxes heard this, they were so sad and highly disappointed. As for Maid, she was no longer an orphan, for Mr. Akejus and his wife have decided to bequeath all that belonged to them to this very faithful maid.